The most confusing time to research in vital records in Pennsylvania, or in fact, almost any record in Pennsylvania, is the 19th century. This time of the 1800s here in the state was just huge, immense growth, lots of immigration, and lots of changes. So if you've been confused, I will unconfuse you. I will clear it up in this episode of Your Pennsylvania Ancestors. Hello, friends. My name's Denise Allen, and I'm a genealogist historian in all things Pennsylvania here in the state of Pennsylvania, hoping to help you discover your Pennsylvania ancestors. This season of the podcast is all about vital records. These are the most basic records genealogists want on their families: records of birth, records of death, records of marriages. In this episode, I am talking about the confusing 19th century. What makes the 19th century so confusing? 5 things. I'm going to run through them. The last thing is the most confusing part. So if you hold on with me, I will unconfuse you, I will clear it up, and you will be a pro at researching in these 19th century records when it comes to Pennsylvania. So here we go. Why do I say the 19th century is the most confusing century in Pennsylvania? Well, for one, Pennsylvania was redrawing the county lines the entire time. When 1800, at the beginning of the 19th century, Pennsylvania had 25 counties. So we had the same size of the state, but we had 25 counties at the time. By 1900, when we're ready to go into the 20th century, Pennsylvania had 67 counties. So we almost made 3 times the number of county courthouses in that time. People didn't necessarily move, but the county was renamed right out from under them during this time. When you're researching in the state, that gets very confusing. What it is called, where your ancestors live. The second most confusing thing about the 19th century is the fact that vital records were called registrations. So these were not the certificates that were sent to people in the mail like we know now, or that they ordered. These were mostly registration books held at county courthouses where people would go and get their births registered or their deaths registered for their family members. The doctor sometimes did it, sometimes the minister did it that was in the area. If it was a suspicious death, the county coroner would do it. And you'll find when you look in them that maybe the doctor registered like 5 people at once of a birth that happened over the last month. So they're not kept at all like modern records. The third most confusing thing about these vital records in the 19th century is the state tried to do them several different times. So people are like, wait, what happened, as they look at the records that are available. The one first like universal attempt across the state of Pennsylvania was in 1852 to do birth, marriage, and death registrations in every county. The problem was that so few citizens complied with this rule that the counties just complained it was too expensive to maintain. They didn't see the point of it, and the law ended up being repealed in 1855. So you'll only find these registrations for births, marriages, and deaths from 1852 to 1854, and you're going to be disappointed when you look at these records, quite frankly. First of all, not all of them survive. The ones that survive, you might find in a county. If it's not a big county, maybe you'll find like 20 registrations. And you're like, wait, I know there were more than 20 people born in a county that had 20,000 people in it. I mean, that's just not possible. Do hope and pray that your ancestor might be in there. At the same time, do not be disappointed if your ancestors are not in those records. Most people's ancestors are not. And that gets me to point number 4 about what's confusing about the 19th century and these vital records in Pennsylvania, and that is the compliance rate. It is not known how many people actually followed the law and registered their births, marriages, and deaths during this time. I'm going to talk in the next segment about laws that came the last half of the 19th century, where it gets super confusing and you want to pay attention because this is the records that you want because they're the most available. But we just don't know how many people complied. I have not seen a study at all. The only study I've seen was in relation to the 1950 census. And in the 1950 census, the U.S. Census Bureau, an actual survey of all the children that were 1 year old or younger in that census. Now that part of the census does not survive. They called it the infant census. But they knew from doing that, because they did it just for 1950 and that last year, back to 1949, they then compared that year to the birth certificates in all the states. And then they discovered in 1950 that the compliance rate, so this was the number of birth certificates that were completed compared to the number of babies that they actually counted, was 98.5%. So it wasn't even 100% in 1950. And then I also saw in the same study that they estimated in 1940, the US Census Bureau estimated that the compliance rate with birth certificates was about 94 to 95%. So it was sliding down, like it wasn't even close to 100 then. And so as a genealogist, I think, well, it's got to be much less, right, in 1930 or 1920. Maybe in 1930 it was 90%. You know, it could have been higher, but we just don't know. In my experience in researching Pennsylvania records and looking at my family, I have people that I do not find in these registration records at all. And oftentimes, it's the people that I most want to find. It seems to be the rule in genealogy in these records. So these are people that maybe they were born out of wedlock, and I want to find the father, and there's no birth registration. Well, and it kind of makes sense, right? Because they're not proud, maybe, of that fact and trying to hide it or trying to protect the father, or who knows what the story is. There's a lot of stories around out of wedlock births in the 19th century. So all I know is when it comes to these registration records, you're not going to have 100% compliance across your family. And the best thing you can do is research all the siblings and all the cousins, even if it's not your direct line, because someone in there might have a record. And in the next episode, I'm going to talk about my favorite vital record, which overlaps with these records that I'm talking about now in the 19th century and might just help you unlock some of your family history. But back to the 19th century, and the most confusing part, number 5, I'm going to give myself a little musical intro here because this next segment is long. Okay, number 5, and the most confusing thing about 19th century vital records is the difference between city registrations and county registrations and the dates that they started and the forms that they used. It is a mass of variation across the last half of the 19th century. So just take yourself in your time machine and think of post-Civil War and all the industrialization that's happening across the country, but particularly in Pennsylvania, especially with King coal. King coal was anthracite coal, which was being used to power much of the industry across the state and across the entire country. And Pennsylvania was the home of anthracite coal. And you'll find in the state at that time, every city that had industries powered by coal had growing populations. And all of these cities founded bureaus of health to help with the public health in their cities. And the first thing you're going to do with public health is do birth registrations and death registrations, because you want to know, is there disease outbreaks? Is there something going on that I, as the city mayor, need to know about, right? These cities that did these early registrations are the following. First of all, Philadelphia, but I'm going to cover Philadelphia in a little bit because there's a lot of things that are consistent across the state, and then you go, Philadelphia. So Philadelphia, always the largest city in Pennsylvania, and I'll talk about that one in a minute. But the largest cities then after that in population is, of course, Pittsburgh in the western part of the state. And then we have Allentown, Reading, and Scranton, all on the eastern side of the state. All of these places had these departments of health, bureaus of health, that were doing birth and death registrations. In the city of Pittsburgh, they started in 1870. In the city of Reading, 1874. In Scranton and Allentown, also 1873, 1874. And those cities, even though they're within counties that didn't start registrations until later, they're doing registrations. So if your ancestor lived in or around those cities, so maybe they worked in the city and lived right outside of it, they could have registered their birth or death in that city. And that would have been done. I know this is confusing. Either at City Hall or possibly the county courthouse is where those records still might be. Check always with the local genealogical or historical societies who probably, most likely, I know definitely, over the years developed indexes to these records because they're so valuable. But you might find them online in digital form on Family Search. So you're going to check under the county catalog listing of what is available online. And it might not be indexed where you can type it in, but at least you can scroll through it and look for your ancestor. And if you can get an index from a local society, that helps you find it within that microfilm roll that's been digitized. Now, I promised I would talk about the city of Philadelphia, which I love to term in my brain the most confusing place in the state of Pennsylvania. The first thing you need to know about the city of Philadelphia is it was a county before it was a city, and it consolidated into that format called the city of Philadelphia in 1854. What you see now as the outline of the city of Philadelphia was, in fact, the county of Philadelphia up to 1854. And at that point, all the boroughs, the townships, and the small city of Philadelphia within the county of Philadelphia consolidated, merged together, and said, we are going to call ourselves now the city of Philadelphia and take on the boundaries of the county of Philadelphia. So that happened in 1854, right before the Civil War. In 1860, again, right before the Civil War, the city of Philadelphia started doing birth registrations, marriage registrations, and death registrations. So they started this way before anywhere else in the state of Pennsylvania in the 19th century. This Philadelphia City Archives is the holder of those records right now and the source where you can find them. Some of the indexes have been done online. You'll find them on Ancestry and Family Search. But if you want to see that nice, juicy, original record with all the information, every single little detail, because it's not all indexed, you're going to want to contact the Philadelphia City Archives. I believe those records are still locked down on Family Search where you can't see the image. You can just like pull it up and know that it exists. So that's who you contact, the city of Philadelphia. And they're definitely worth getting. They change over time from 1860 through the whole last half of the 19th century. So you're going to find different formats. If you're searching one particular family, maybe over like a 15-year period, the form you start with for the oldest family members is going to be different than the form for the younger family members. So don't get confused. Just kind of roll with the flow on these. And just know that they do change form. And you're going to find that too as you go from city to city. The forms do vary in format. There was a standard in terms of what the state wanted and what the law required, but there wasn't a standard form issued for everyone to use. If this was all confusing in terms of these registrations across the 19th century and what's available and what you can get and what you can use and how do you get it, I'd encourage you to register for my Inner Circle membership. I have a research Q&A where you can submit your individual question and get your question answered individually. I do those Q&As on Zoom. You don't have to attend the Zoom to get your answer. I record the Zoom, so then you can watch the recording and get your answer that way. You can also watch the recordings where I show how to access on the Family Search catalog, the county records, and scroll down and find your vital records that are available on there. But as always, I always encourage people to contact our local resources. They're excellent and experts on what's available in that local county or the city. And we'll be more than happy to help you get that original record for your ancestor. These records can be hard to get in the 19th century, but who doesn't want more records on their ancestors? I know I do. This is Denise Allen with PA Ancestors, and I hope this helped you discover lots of your Pennsylvania ancestors.